Also, if you'll notice at the top, there's a difference in the color up there. And we'll shave this off here in a moment and let you see what we're talking about. Okay, now to help you visualize the keelson, external keelson that is on the model of the boat, we've strung this rope along here. Now, if we shave this off, it'll probably speed up the erosion process, but that rope is right along the bottom of the external keelson, and if you'll notice, there's about a 3-foot width of darker material right there just above the rope until you get to this area, and then it widens out. And so the keelson was a little narrower up at the front of the boat than it was along the side of the boat. Okay, go ahead. Now you'll observe that that structural material, because it's petrified wood, is more porous, and the water soaks into it, and then in the winter when it freezes, the water expands when it becomes ice and fractures that material. So the petrified wood is much more vulnerable to the freezing and thawing that takes place in the wintertime than the matrix, or the cover material. And so that's why they are a different color, a different texture, and also a different in hardness. Alrighty. That keelson comes right down through there, and again we'll sweep along. Okay, that's got it, Richard. Sweep right down along through here.
This was a perfect example of how extremely fragile the remains were. Once exposed to the elements, any intact structures would be reduced to tiny fragments in probably one season. If it was ever to be excavated, it would have to be first covered and protected, and then each exposed structure member would have to be encased in some type of acrylic polymer to seal it and protect it, a process that would involve a tremendous amount of time and effort. Yet Ron still dreamed of the day it could be excavated. In 1991, Ron took a tour group to the site, and as he approached, he noticed a large object and picked it up. When he turned it over in his hand, he saw that it displayed the perfect shape of a rivet with a washer around it, and that it appeared to be fossilized.
Our last trip out there this past June, we found this very impressive rivet, and if you'll notice here, the plate itself is just a little more than 1/4 inch in thickness. It's approximately 3.5 inches in diameter, the plate itself, and then the shaft of the rivet is roughly 1 inch to 1.25 inches in diameter. And if you'll notice here, it was struck while it was hot and flared out the end of the shaft so that it would not slide back through the hole in this washer. And this shows that their abilities to use metal was quite advanced.
In 1984, he had photographed areas along the sides of the ark which showed colorations suggestive of metal oxides, all in circles. He hadn't disturbed these for fear of destroying them, but now he believed this specimen showed an actual example of one of the metal fittings. It was analyzed by 3 separate laboratories. Since it was fossilized, a great deal of its original material would have been replaced by minerals, and the analysis showed it contained about 20% silicon, which was expected. However, it also contained very high percentages of aluminum, titanium, and iron, the same metals which were found in the slag material used as ballast, except for one major exception. The ballast material contained over 84% manganese, yet the rivet specimen only contained less than 1%. This was even more evidence. In the production of aluminum and steel, very large quantities of manganese are required, but very little remains in the alloy. Steel generally contains less than 1%, yet over 95% of the manganese produced today is used in the production of alloys, with the majority of it ending up in the waste product. And this is exactly what the evidence at Noah's Ark indicates. A few months later, in August of 1991, Ron, Richard Reeves, Marv Wilson, and Dr. Alan Roberts of Australia met with several authorities in Ankara to request a permit to excavate. Dr. Roberts had contacted Ron in 1990 and expressed a serious interest in the site. Ron had provided him with details of the research, which Dr. Roberts studied carefully. He visited the site alone in 1990 and, like Dr. Shea, believed that an excavation was necessary. By this time, he had received a financial commitment from a British corporation to fund the excavation with Ron as head of the project. Ron explained the procedure he planned to use that would protect the exposed sections. After short deliberations, the men were told that they would receive the permit. But it was Thursday, and due to a long holiday, the offices would not again be opened until Monday, at which time they were to pick up the permit. With several days to kill, the 4 men decided to fly to Erzurum and visit the region southwest of the Ark. De Lavar got a minivan and they headed south. But as they neared Bengal, they were taken hostage by a group of guerrillas belonging to the PKK, an outlaw Kurdish party. For 3 weeks they were taken through the steep mountains, sleeping on the bare ground during the day and traveling constantly during the night. When it was over, any hopes of excavating were shattered. The men had been through a terrible ordeal, as we see them here in the helicopter which took them from Bengal. It was also too late in the season to consider excavating. Each family had to deal with the emotional trauma which only time would heal. In time, we all recovered. But the region continued to remain unstable. In June of 1992, we took our second tour group to Turkey, and as we neared Dobbayazit, a beautiful rainbow appeared across the sky. The bus pulled over and everyone got out to film and photograph it. Then we again continued down the road, but within a few minutes we were flagged down by soldiers who wouldn't allow us to visit the Ark. And to this day, the region remains unstable and dangerous for tourists. The controversy continues to grow even though the evidence is overwhelming. Some who were once ardent supporters and associates now deny the evidence. So, is it really the Ark?
What we actually have found is physical evidence that this is a boat. Whether or not it's Noah's Ark is up to the people that review the material. That's up to them to decide on that. My personal feeling is that it is Noah's Ark.